I'm going to try my best to go through this for those of you who are either in class or need it a little slowed down so you can go at your own pace. But we are starting off by naming all of the key features in our parabola. And if you notice, I'll try to color code as best I can. Some things are easier than others. I always like to start off in a parabola by looking at the vertex. Here is my vertex. My vertex is at -3, 1. Because your vertex can tell you so much on all this. It gives you your axis of symmetry, it gives you the value of either your maximum or minimum, and it helps you with your range, knowing all that information. Axis of symmetry is just the x value of your vertex, so x equals -3. And then we look at either the parabola, or in a little bit we'll look at the table to determine if it's a maximum or minimum. In this case, notice it's making a sad face. So it is at the tippy top, meaning it is a maximum value. And we'll come back to that sad face information here in a little bit. And it is a maximum value of 1. Because maximum measures height, the maximum height of this parabola is at 1. Oh, and the last thing I said you can get is your range. Your range is being compared to 1. And notice all of the other part of the parabola is below 1, so less than or equal to 1. The next part we're looking at is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is down here at 0, 8. The thing about the y-intercept that helps you on other parts of this chart is that it is your c value. So my c value is 8. And I can go ahead and plug that in here and there. Sorry, and did I say 8? That's a -8. Lastly, we have our roots. Our roots, zeros, x-intercepts, and solutions are rocks. My roots are -4 and -2. My zeros are -4 and -2. X-intercepts you write as an ordered pair, so -4, 0, -2, 0. And solutions you write as x equals -4 and -2. Lastly, so far what you know is domain. I see an arrow over here, left to right, meaning my domain is all real numbers. For my table, we're given points plotted on the parabola, and you always start with your least to greatest. So least x, furthest left, all the way to your right. So we have -6, -8, -5, -3, -4, 0, -3, 1, -2, 0, -1, 3, and 0, -8. Recall that -3, 1 is my vertex. -3, 1 is your vertex. If we didn't have a graph, you would be able to tell that because around the vertex, your y values are repeating. So the vertex is the center of the rainbow. Around the vertex, your y values are repeating because it's a parabola, and the vertex is the turning point once it starts to turn. In my table, we also have my roots, which is where y is equal to 0. Roots, zeros, x-intercepts, and solutions. And in this particular table, you also have your y-intercept. Actually, I did blue for that one. Sorry, my color coding went off. All right, all fine and dandy, but now we get to the actual good part of writing these equations. So vertex form. Notice vertex form requires your vertex being -3, 1. H and K, H, K, -3, +1. What we don't know is my A. So we're going to do a little bit of algebra to figure out my A. I'm going to go ahead and plug in what I do know. So f of x equals, don't know my A, leave that blank for right now, x minus squared plus blank. X minus h, your h is -3, which makes it a +3, and +1. To figure out what goes here, your A value, notice we have an f of x, which is the same thing as y, and x. So I'm going to go to my table, and I'm going to pick another point that is not my vertex to plug in for y and x and y. So let's look at, and for this one we'll use orange. Let's do -1, 3, just because we don't have that one circled. And we're going to plug in again for x and y. So y becomes 3. We still don't know my A. X becomes -1. And yes, I'm writing tiny so it can fit. +3 squared +1. To solve for A, we have to simplify this side of the equation to get it down to a two-step equation. So we start with inside the parentheses, -1 plus 3 is 2 squared plus 1, A equals 3. Next, I do 2 squared, which is 4. So 3 equals A times 4 plus 1, which really this can be written as 3 equals 4A plus 1. Okay. So now notice at this point it's a two-step equation where we take away 1 from both sides. I'm going to twist my paper so I have space, which gives me 2 equals, did I do something wrong? It's a -1. No, I did that right. Something's not adding up here. It's a -3. That's what's not adding up. So this is actually -3. I wrote it wrong on my table. There we go. So now you -1. So we have -4 equals 4A. Then you divide by 4 on both sides. And A equals -1. So now that we know my A, my equation in vertex form is f of x equals -1, x plus 3 squared plus 1. Moving on from there, we can take vertex form and change it over to standard form. We already know my A, which is -1. And so we're trying to find my B now. To change vertex form to standard form, we're going to need to change this to where ax squared plus bx plus c shows up. Notice we don't have an ax squared. However, we do see a square term. So somehow we got to get rid of the square term out here and just make the x squared. If this wasn't here, that is x plus 3 squared. X plus 3 squared means I multiply it twice. So we have x plus 3 squared, which is x plus 3 times x plus 3. X times x is x squared. 3 times 3 is 9. This goes back to the box method or Charlie Smile method. So everything we've learned so far is coming back to this one thing. 3 times x is 3x. X times 3 is 3x. Those get combined to give me a 6x. So this, let me get a highlighter so you can see it. That part is this part worked out. So now that we have this part worked out, we can rewrite it as f of x equals -1 parentheses x squared plus 6x plus 9 plus 1. And we distribute. So that is f of x equals -1x squared minus 6x minus 9. No parentheses needed anymore. Plus 1. And then we can combine the like terms over here, so that is f of x equals -1x squared minus 6x minus 8. Notice my C, -8, my A, -1, and now we know my B of -6. Okay. And my final portion, factored form, we're actually going to change what this says. And it's going to be A parentheses x minus P, close parentheses, x minus Q. For factored form, we take this number right, or this equation right here, and factor it out. That's my Xbox method. First thing we're going to do is look for a GCF. My x squared term, just like any other time we do standard. Sorry, that's smudged. It's going to bug me. My x squared term, or my a term, cannot be negative. So we're going to actually factor out a -1. So that means my a is going to equal -1, which again, we've already seen that consistency in the last two forms. So if I factor out a -1, that leaves me with x squared plus 6x plus 8. Now we do our x box. A times c on top, b on the bottom. So that's 8 and 6, which 4 and 2 multiply to give me 8. And add to give me 6. X squared, 8, 4x, 2x. X is the like term here, or the greatest common factor here. X times 4 gives me 4x. 4 times 2 gives me 8. 2 times x gives me 2x. So our factored form is f of x equals -1 for your a, x plus 2, x plus 4. And the final part is over here, quadratic formula. We're just learning how to plug stuff in for right now. Later on, we'll actually come back and solve it. So my a value is -1. My b value is -6. So x equals -b, so -6, plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4, -1 times 2, or divided by 2 over -1. And there is your filled out chart. Okay? Watch the next video to see how to use Desmos to do all this math work for you.